Hello and welcome to today's Partner Web Conference. This is Fast Track Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations Tech Talk. Today's topic, Microsoft Managed Continuous Updates. What's new? Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Principal Program Manager Shelley Bach. So without any further delay, Shelley, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining. Great attendance today. As Janice had mentioned, please feel free to go ahead and submit your questions throughout, and we'll be compiling the questions and adding them to an FAQ document that I'll talk about at the end of the presentation. Today, what we're going to focus on from our one version or our Microsoft Managed Continuous Updates is really the validation aspect of what one version means. Before we get into the validation component of it, I do want to just make sure that we set the stage on what one version is all about, how are we moving to one version, and what it really means to be on one version from your perspective, the customer's perspective. And then at that point in time, we're going to dig into the validation tools we're making available, and that's where I'll invite my colleague Dave, Robert, and Sunil to give you guys some updates on some of those tools along with a few of the demos. So we'll go a little deeper on that portion of this today during our Tech Talk. Let's kick it off with one version and what does it mean? One version is really all about getting our customers on the latest product version. The One Version initiative is a Dynamics 365 initiative. Now, throughout this discussion, we're really going to focus today on finance and operations. I'm going to show a little bit about how One Version is affecting some of the customer engagement applications. We won't be talking today about Talent or Business Central also being part of the Dynamics 365 family, and that's because those products are already on the one version journey. So we're going to deep dive into what this means for finance and operations as well as retail. Whenever we're thinking about the one version journey, there's two continuous principles that always come into mind for us. It is the predictability for our customers to know when you're getting an update and what that update means and entails, as well as having the update be continuous. Now, with that in mind, let's go ahead and start talking about what does it mean to be an evergreen solution, and how is Microsoft Finance and Operations able to get to a continuous update model? We're able to get to that model by creating what we've called an evergreen application. Now, the Evergreen application really starts with version 8.1. And with our 8.1 release, this is the release where we have made customizations available through extension points. You don't lose the value prop of finance and operations by moving to an evergreen application. And one of the big value props, not just in the configurability of the system, is also in the customization ability. And how can you really take what we provide and extend it to get much richer experiences for the customers? By still allowing that extension capability, what we've done with 8.1 is changed how it's extended. So there's no more overlayering. For any of you that have been on the product since Dynamics AX and even in the early versions of Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, what we have done is we've moved away from overlayering and moved to extension points. You also see here on this slide where we've enabled some additional capability for you to extend the solution that really can be done by end users or citizen developers. You can get the power and richness of finance and operations by using embedded Power Apps, embedded Power BI reports, adding custom fields as an administrator of the solution without needing to be a hardcore developer. Now that we know what one version is all about, we know how we're able to get a platform or an application ready for one version by allowing the extension points. Then we talk about at the bottom of the slide, the 6 buckets really about what is the value prop of being on an evergreen application. The value prop, primarily, the top two boxes really just kind of sum it up for me. All 6 of them are great, but the top 2 are near and dear to my heart. The first one is really about the continuous update process. There is no more expensive upgrades. For those of you that are familiar with our product and that have been around finance and operations or Dynamics AX for quite some time, you know our customization model was completed through overlayering. And overlayering meant that anytime you would take hot fixes or need to upgrade to the latest version, doing any kind of a data upgrade or even code upgrade, it was expensive because you had to refactor that code to account for the overlayering customizations. The beauty of being on an Evergreen application where you no longer apply your customizations through overlayering means that you can be on a continuous update cadence. And I'm going to be very particular about using update as we talk about the Evergreen application because there's really no more an upgrade. What we have also seen by having customers on the latest is really the supportability and serviceability of that environment is just skyrocketed. No more, we don't have any customers that are left behind on old versions. Everyone is on the latest version of the platform, on the latest version of the application, and it really just helps improve the supportability of the service as well as your end users' experiences. As I talked about, and we've been on the slide for a bit, all of these are really great components. The top ones are near and dear to my heart as far as the value prop and why, but really making sure that we're improving the experience overall from not just upgrade to faster implementations for the ISVs to really make sure that they can go ahead and innovate alongside Microsoft. You no longer have to wait until your ISV is ready. Moving along into our support policy timelines. So with us moving to one version, we have made some changes to our support policy. And this is the area where I talk about the customer engagement apps. So the customer engagement applications are also moving to version 10. For a unified operations, which includes finance and operations and retail, this is where we will also be moving to version 10. Now, let's spend a little bit of time on the right side. What you can see is we have several application versions, 7.0, 7.1, and 7.2. The support lifecycle for those products will be ending in April of 2019. So if you are a customer on any of those versions, you should be planning for your upgrade to version 8.1. Now, if you have customizations and you need some of those extension points in order to accommodate your customizations for finance and operations, hopefully you've submitted those requests, and those requests need to be submitted by to our R&D team by January 1st. And if we have not been able to fulfill those extensibility requests, what we will do then is we will still support you on 7.3. So if you have any outstanding extensibility requests that have been submitted to Microsoft by January 1 of 2019, you will be still supported on 7.3 until Microsoft fulfills those requests. Once we fulfill those requests, we do ask that you upgrade to version 10 within 90 days of having that request filled. We are expecting all of the customers on 7.3 to be upgraded to version 10 prior to April of 2020. But this is just kind of our date that we put out there to say that we are not planning on, and we plan on having all of our extensibility requests completed and made available for our ecosystem. So that way, within the next year of April of 2019 to April 2020, all of our customers will be on version 10. When we think about the service update, and those service updates are going to be monthly updates that are going to be made available for you to consume, we have two primary guiding principles on those service updates. The first is to always ensure quality. And by ensuring quality, what we have are several bullets here. I'm not going to go through each of these bullets because we have covered this in quite a bit more depth in prior Tech Talks, but I want to talk about the key ones. The first one is backwards compatibility. This is really what allows our ISVs to be innovating alongside of us. It allows us to be able to apply a service update to an environment to ensure we are not breaking anything in that environment. The other point that I want to talk about on this slide is the bottom one on ensuring quality, and I want to hit on this again because this is really where we are ensuring that the updates that we provide are cumulative in nature. Another way to think about this is that from a service update perspective, as well as from a hot fix that we are applying or that you can apply for that service update, they are all cumulative. So every service update will be cumulative in nature. Any hot fix that gets released upon that service update is also cumulative in nature. So we no longer have any more individual hot fixes like you do on version 8, version 7, or even AX 2012 or AX 2009. We will still continue to hot fix the service updates, but everything is cumulative. The next guiding principle that we have is that you as the customer are in control. We have several experiences that we talk about when we talk about one version. The first experience being about how you onboard, how you get notified, as well as then how you go about validating. And we're going to talk about these in just a little bit. But an area that I want to talk about from a customer and control perspective, all of these updates are going to be defaulted as monthly updates. But you as a customer can choose to pause an update. In fact, you can choose to pause up to 3 months of an update. So this is really in those situations and those scenarios where maybe you have a high business impact such as a retailer, and it's your busy season, and you do not want to be introducing new updates during that busy season or during that busy time. You can then choose to pause an update. If you've just recently gone live and you want to have a stability in your environment for 2 months or 3 months, you can pause an update and not take an update for up to 3 months after you have gone live. So making sure to know that you are in control of these updates. By you being in control of these updates, you also can pull the update and not just have Microsoft apply the update for you. We're going to talk quickly about some of our quality that we go through from a safe deployment practice. We're going to start with the outer ring and work our way in. So from an outer ring perspective, these are the customers that have chosen the update time frame that you want to get in Lifecycle Services. And by ring 4, this is the customer saying, this is the weekend I want to receive my update. This is a monthly, it's predictable. We always update the customer's acceptance, their UAT environment first, and then production. Then we have ring 3, and on a ring 3 perspective, these are customers that signed up to be our first release customers. These are the customers that Microsoft will either auto update or you can self and pull the update first. For both ring 3 and ring 4, this is generally available, production quality. It's ready in real time for you to deploy and have available in your environments. Ring 2, this is our preview. This is where we invite all partners, ISVs, as well as customers to join us in this program that we refer to as our Preview Early Access Program, that you can get early access to this build. So that way you can be doing some testing and validation in a preview environment. And then ring 0 and ring 1, these are environments or rings that we have that are internal for us and our own development staff. When we talk about the one version update experience, the 1 in one version, the O, really stands for the onboarding. This is where you will configure your weekend for the update. You will do all of this in Lifecycle Services. For those of you that are on the Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations product today, you notice that we are already doing this on the platform. The only challenge is that you guys don't have control. You guys don't have that control to say and really to map out for your business when you're going to take the update. This, you can come into Lifecycle Services and you'll be able to start doing this shortly after the first of the year, the calendar year that is, to start going ahead and updating and configuring your weekend. Next is us notifying you of those updates. We are really going to be blasting this heavy in Lifecycle Services. You're going to be able to click on what's new links in practically everywhere you go to see about the update to learn what is in it. And that includes not only the new functionality that may be added, but also all the hot fixes that are included as well. We will still send notification emails to those in that Lifecycle Services project, but we'll also be including a toast notification on the environment so you know that that environment will be getting updated. Next is to execute the update. By default, like I talked about, the updates will be coming out monthly. We have simplified the tile experience in Lifecycle Services, so you just have one tile to pull from to get the latest update. And that tile will be updated with any hot fixes that Microsoft releases on that service update. You can have the update auto-scheduled by Microsoft by configuring it through your onboarding, or, as I talked about earlier, you can join some of those first release programs in order to be able to pull that update and apply it at your time. And then the last part of our 1V update experience is the V, and that's our validate. This is really where I'm going to start to turn it over to my colleagues now to talk about the tools that we have available. The first tool that we have is the Impact Analyzer tool. And with that, let me go ahead and turn it over to Dave to talk about the impact analysis and the background. Dave, it's all yours.
Thank you, Shelley. So the first thing when a new release comes out is to get an idea where the risky areas might be within the release. And the risky areas are going to be in the places where the product has been used a lot. So given your particular situation, the modules that you use most often, and also, of course, where the product has changed. If the product's changed in places of the product that are not interesting to you, that you don't use at all, that you have turned off, that's not a risky area. But if it's changed a little bit in an area where you use the product frequently, that's an area that you probably want to pay attention to from an impact perspective. So the goal of this tool really is to look at usage and churn, and I'm talking about code churn, and I'll explain that a little bit in the next slide, as well as down the road some future areas like customization, so that you can better assess the risk and ultimately test smarter and have a more efficient test cycle. So the concepts of this, there's code churn on the top, and that's just lines of code that have been added, deleted, or modified in the release. And initially it's going to be focused on Microsoft Apps Suite code, and we'll incrementally add more code from the platform and other places as we go in future releases. On the bottom is this concept of user interactions. And user interactions are things that something that we can gather from our telemetry, and it's really just mouse clicks. And the mouse clicks and the code churn aggregate together in the middle, which are the modules. So it's the sales module, accounts payable, accounts receivable. And the way we map those things together is based on an internal ownership model, so that we know which objects in our system are associated with which modules, and we know which forms and associated user interactions are associated with each module, so that we can tie that together and get the analysis that I talked about in the previous slide. So that center part is the first phase. Later, we want to look at customization. So another risky area is when you've customized, or an ISV has customized parts of the product that have been changed for a release. And then on the right, another thing that we can do is not so much about assessing risk, but assessing how you can react to it, is by looking at your task recordings and understanding which areas of the product your task recordings address, and then help prioritize which of those you either want to manually walk through or use some automation like we're going to talk about in subsequent slides with my peers here. So that's kind of the roadmap. And if we go to the next slide, I'll give you an example of what this looks like. And so what you see is a Power BI report that is a prototype. And the objective here is to get this into LCS. It's in development at this point. It's going to be a spring time frame before it's generally available, but it's coming, and we wanted to get this out in front of you to get some feedback on the tool. So the key part of this is the bubble chart in the middle, and on the x-axis is the total user interactions, and in this prototype it's across our entire ecosystem, all customers, but in the implementation in LCS, it will only be for your usage, your usage within your organization. And if you look at the bubble that has the fly out there, that's the sales module, and that is the most used part of the product, and that's why it's all the way over to the right. It has the most user interactions. On the y-axis, vertically, is the code churn, the lines of code that have been changed in the release. And you can see towards the middle left, the warehouse and transportation module was the module that was changed the most in this release, which actually is looking at the change from 8.1 to 8.11. The thing that you're going to look for as a customer is what things are in the upper right, things that have changed and that you use a lot. And that's your primary focus from a testing perspective. You're going to have to make a judgment call. Maybe there's things on the lower right that there isn't a lot of churn, but they're essential to your business. That's maybe something that's going to be a priority from a testing perspective. What you see on the bottom is actually the list of files that have changed in the system, so the objects that have been modified and how much they've been modified. So I'll give you more information as far as what things have actually changed. And you can also filter based on the object type and things like that. So the whole goal of this is to get more intelligence into the testing process, but another part of that is to reduce the amount of effort it takes for you to go and test the release as it comes out on a regular cadence. And that's the topic of the next section, which is the Regression Suite automation tool that I'm going to hand over to Robert to talk about.
Thanks, Dave. Hello, everyone. What I'm going to talk about right now is a new tool that was released, that was made available for everyone early October. We call it the Regression Suite Automation Tool, or RSAT in short. The target users of this tool are customers or partners looking for business process scenario validation. It is not for unit testing or component testing, what typically is a task of a developer. It will allow you to, using the task recorder functionality of finance and operations, to record once that recording and multiple playback of this particular recording as different test cases with different data configurations as well. It will require no code, as in you will not need a developer or any sort of code authoring to run this automation tool. It is fully integrated with Azure DevOps, what used to be called Visual Studio Team Services. This allows you to investigate results, report on results, and manage your test suite and all of your test cases as well. And one of the key features of this tool is the decoupling of test steps from data parameters. And this is what allows the record once multiple playback, where you will be changing the data parameters and the data configuration of a particular test case without really having to rewrite that test case itself. This slide describes the end-to-end flow of how you'd use the tool. There's an authoring and distribution step that you use BPM for this. You configure it using Azure DevOps, and you use the tool itself for execution. And Azure DevOps is used for actual management of the results and reporting on the test results. This is well documented in the documentations. I will not go through it in details. I'm going to jump to a demo right away. I'm going to share my desktop. What I am starting with right now is a view of my BPM library, or Business Process Modeler. For those of you familiar with this as an implementation or fit gap analysis tool, or even as a learning tool or a training tool, it can be used, the same tool can be used and customized to hold basically your test library. What I have right now is 3 business processes with 6 task recordings. These are recordings that I created using the finance and operations task recorder. For example, the create purchase order right now, I click on it. There's this little icon that indicates to me that this task has a recording associated with it. If I click on the diagrams, I can go to the page that shows me the recording. These are the steps on the right that describe how this recording or this test case has been recorded. This particular BPM is synchronized with Azure DevOps, or what used to be called the STS. These are 2 little options here that you have to turn on, so your entire BPM library is synchronized with Azure DevOps. So this allows you to configure the Regression Suite tool and prepare it for execution. Once you synchronize your BPM with Azure DevOps, this is how it would look in your Azure DevOps project. This is my Azure DevOps project. I have synchronized my library here. This is the same hierarchy of business processes that you saw on the LCS BPM. And for every test case that I have in BPM, for every task recording that I have in BPM, I have a test case in Azure DevOps. It's converted into an actual work item of type test case. And if I go and look at it,
we're only seeing Lifecycle Services on the screen.
Okay, let me correct that by trying to reshare.
Thank you.
Sorry about this. I'm going to try to refresh and reshare my desktop. I'm getting messages that some folks were seeing correctly, so I'll refresh my screen anyway. So this is the Azure DevOps. As I said, all my business processes have been synchronized here. I have every task recording that appears in the test case with every Technically, once you're done with this, you can go ahead and start executing these test cases manually and using the Azure DevOps feature to mark the test pass or failed or annotated. Once you have once you have synchronized your entire test suite in Azure DevOps, your entire test library, test suite means something specific that I'm going to get to in a second. Once you have synchronized your entire test library in Azure DevOps, you should go and start creating a test plan and test suites in Azure DevOps. A test suite is a collection of test cases that have to run together as one run. It typically contains one full end-to-end process, or could be 2 or 3, and it allows you to run a specific set of test cases in a specific order. In that case, I've selected all my test cases to be part of this test suite, but Azure DevOps gives you the capability of building a hierarchy of test suites depending on what type of processes you want to test at particular intervals. For example, you may have a comprehensive test suite that you run once every 2 weeks, a small, more specific test suite to specific scenarios that you want to run on a daily basis if you are developing or implementing within that particular scenario, and so on. So take full advantage of these features in Azure DevOps to build your test plan and your collection of test suites. Your license of Azure DevOps to have access to this functionality. Once you have completed this, it's time for you to go and start using the Regression Suite tool. It's a desktop application that you download from Microsoft.com/download. You start it on any computer or any laptop that has access to a finance and operation environment via URL. You do not need to test it on a finance and operation environment. You just need access, web access to that environment. I have it here running. First thing you do is you configure this tool to connect to your Azure DevOps project. You select the test plan that you are working with, and there's plenty of documentation as to how you can configure this correctly. But as you know, in summary, you select what test plan you are using and what test suite, and you also specify the URL of the finance and operation environment you are testing against. You have the option of selecting either Internet Explorer or Google Chrome as your web browser, and there's a couple of other settings like a default company to run your test under. These settings these configurations for a setting can also be saved as different files because you might be using this particular client to test different environments and so on. So you can save these settings and retrieve them later on if you decide to test against a different environment, for example. Once you have configured the tool, you click on the load button. The load button will download your test plan, the selected test plan from your Azure DevOps project. You can see the hierarchy of test suites right here. I'm going to select the acceptance test suite that I have created. It lists all my test cases. If this is the first time you're using the tool, you need to click on this new button. This new button does all the magic, basically. What it does, it converts the recordings that you got from your BPM and it turns them into binaries or executable test files. So it does the job that typically a developer does for you. It converts steps into an actual program that can run. It also separates the test steps from your test parameters and generates Excel files for you to specify the configurations or the input parameters of your test. For example, right here, I have a test case that creates a purchase order. I'm going to select it, click on the edit button to open the Excel file, and show you the type of parameters you can play with. On the first tab, you select things like what's the user that's going to run your test. This will be the finance and operations user with specific security roles that your test will run under. There are other general parameters like a pause before you start a test. In this tab here, it's called Infolog Validation. You specify messages that you expect to see as the test is running. For example, if the test is expected to display a particular message as it's executing, all the messages you enter here will be validated at the end of the test. And if an expected message is not in the message pane of finance and operations, the test will fail. The rest of the tabs are basically all the forms that the recording goes through when you authored that test. So this one went to the sales order form, and then it went to the create order, and then it went to the sales table form, and then it went to the sales totals form. And it has all the input parameters that you can change to configure your test. The input parameters here are automatically generated, and they are based on how you recorded the test. So if during the test recording you have modified a particular value on the finance and operation client, a variable is generated for you and will be a part of this Excel sheet. I'm going to close this right now. I will jump to the back to my Azure DevOps project. What I want to, once you have configured your test and you have executed them, the results are all sent to the Azure DevOps. This is, for example, the list of runs I have run over the last several days. Each time I click the run button, it creates a run for me in Azure DevOps, and I can tell that most of them have passed completely with 100% pass rate, but I have some I need to look at. For example, this run 122 has completed only with 83%. If I double click on it to go check out this run, there was 8 business process test cases that were run. One of them failed. I want to know why this test case has failed. I click on test results here. I look at the test case that failed, double click on it. And within the test result, I can see every step that the test case went through and the ones that succeeded. And I picked on purpose one that errored quite in an ugly way because this looks like an exception. This looks like something that is not accepted. This is not a pleasant error or an error that's expected. When this occurs, in addition to the logs, we log plenty of information that are written during test execution. But because this one failed with an exception, we also take a snapshot of the environment when this test case failed. It should give you an idea as to why it fails. How did the environment look like? How did the finance and operation client look like when the test case has failed? Having said that, I wanted to show you this particular feature. There's plenty of other features you can play with as you're investigating your test results, but this was an interesting one to look at. Going back to the tool to execute the test cases, you basically select either all of them or you select one that you're interested in. I'm going to select the free text invoice right now, and you click on the run button. And this will start the client, will access finance and operation the finance and operation environment you're testing against, and will execute the test cases. When the test case is complete, it logs the results to Azure DevOps. This is what I had in terms of the Regression Suite automation tool. The next topic in validation is a key validation area, which is validation of your import and export or of your data management tasks. One thing I didn't mention, this tool only supports things that can be done via task recordings. But another key area of automation we want you to use and to know about is how do you automate your integrations. For that, I'm going to pass it to Sunil to talk about the data task automation feature available also in finance and operations.
Thanks, Robert. Hi, everyone, and good afternoon. So the next step in the validation story is how do we validate data management related scenarios? And these scenarios are import scenarios, export scenarios, and integration scenarios as well. Now, the slide that we have here is just to put things in context with regards to what are the different combination of scenarios that are possible in data management. Now, depending on the functional footprint and the usage that a implementation project has, there can be few scenarios to a large number of scenarios simply because of the flexibility that data management framework has. And that is what this slide is trying to portray, which is there are about 40 plus options that can be configured that can work together. And that can pretty quickly result in a lot of permutation and combination of scenarios. So given that complexity and given that, that importance of these scenarios anyways with regards to whether the project is going through implementation or even after post go live, it is very important to have a automation tool set that is available to all of us, not just internal to Microsoft, but also to our ecosystem, where we all can use the same automation tool set for validation of these different scenarios. So data task automation is available starting PU20. It's a platform capability. And the basic principles that we have followed to build this platform or the framework is, it is part of the product, it is part of the standard F&O platform, which means it doesn't require any additional installs anywhere. It is just in the data management workspace itself. We have attempted to make the authoring of the test cases itself to be a low-code, no-code experience. And I will quickly show how that test definition looks like. The objective is that a functional user should be able to author these test automation without having to write any serious coding at all. The framework is integrated with LCS, and the reason for that integration, and it is one of the key tenets of the framework, is to allow for easy management of test data, whether it is data files or it is data packages. LCS already has the concept of data packages, and data packages reside in LCS, so that is a known user experience, that is a known flow. So we just wanted to make sure that that experience remains consistent, and the automation toolset in data management can consume data files and packages from LCS itself. We'll talk about how we can enable ALM story for QA processes in data management as well. Basically, the test cases, the test suite files can be checked into your source control as resources in AOT, because these are XML files. And we will see how that manifests itself in the end user experience of consumption of the test cases. And last but not the least, the framework has some standard built-in validations, which will automatically get validated based on how the test was configured. So for example, if somebody had set skip staging to yes, then the framework will automatically validate if the staging was really skipped or not. And based on those validations, it will return a true or a false or a fail or a pass result for the test case. So these are the key principles behind which the framework was designed and built, and it is available starting PU20. Now, let me quickly share my desktop, and we can actually take a quick look at the demo of the toolset itself. So I believe now it has loaded, and all of you can see FNO screen. So this is a brand new deployment. There is nothing that has been executed in data management workspace yet. And this is a standard Contoso demo data environment that we have. So the data task automation is available right here. It's a new tile. And once we click into it, we go inside the data task automation list page, if you will, or you can call it as a data task automation manager. And I will talk about the key interesting aspects of this in the interest of time. Now, from an ALM perspective, I was talking about the test suites that can be checked into the source control itself. So there are two aspects to that. One is the test authoring itself that we will take a look at. And now I have the Visual Studio open here, which is actually showing a sample test suite manifest. So this is an XML-based manifest file where we define three things to basically define a test case. The first section is the shared setup, where we actually define the data that is required for test automation. And the data can reside in a shared asset library in LCS, in which case the project ID will be blank. Or you can actually choose to have the assets in a specific project's asset library as well. Once we define what data is being used or should be used, we define the parameters for the job definition itself. And the parameters that are available from the UI are all available from the XML manifest here. So which means you can now see readily that how easy it can become to quickly automate different combinations of test cases just by changing values in this manifest file. Last but not the least, from a setup perspective, the third component is the entity setup itself. So as you would know, there are several behaviors that can be configured on the entity itself, and those can be configured from the manifest also. So these together gives the power to the framework where you can actually build new automation test cases very quickly by just changing the values. And here is where we define the actual test cases, and the actual test case becomes quite simple because the test case is nothing but a reference to which data I need to use, which job definition I need to use, and which entity definition I need to use. Now, if all the test cases were referencing the same set of definitions, then they all will do the same thing. But that is not the intent. So each test case can actually override the behavior for any of the setup elements, thereby creating a unique behavior and a unique test scenario. So this makes the manifest management also quite easy. And that was our motivation to make this as a low-code, no-code experience where a functional user can actually go and define the test cases or author the test cases. So with that context, once the manifest is ready and you have tested it and it is good to go, you can actually check it in your source control. And once you check it in, this is how the end user experience is going to be, where they can actually click load default tasks, which will actually look inside the build itself, and it will list out the test manifests that are there in that build. Now, as part of the platform build, we actually ship 2 sample manifests. And those are the manifests that we are seeing here. So if you were checking in your own manifest in your build, when you deploy to your target environment, you will see a 3rd manifest, and so on and so forth. So you can actually select a manifest, and you can actually say, I want to load this manifest file. And once it is loaded, all the test cases show up. And this is basically reading the manifest file, and it is parsing the manifest file. And it shows you, what group the test case is in. That way, you know functionally what is being tested, and so on and so forth. This also tracks the total time that it has taken for a test to be used. So you can actually use this as a performance benchmarking test tool as well. And using the standard, Office integration, you can actually export the results to an Excel file for your record-keeping purposes as well. So now, from an execution perspective, you can actually select one test or multiple tests, or you can just select all, and then you can click on Run Tasks. And it is going to ask me, can I connect to LCS? And we say yes. It is trying to authenticate now to LCS, and the authentication is successful here. And once it comes back, we can actually go back to the data task automation, and we can actually start the test run itself. So this is completed, and I can come back here and I can say, OK. And now the test cases are getting executed one after the other. So right now, it is understanding the manifest for the first test case. It understands, OK, this is the file I need to download from LCS for data. It is talking to LCS, downloading the file. Then it will create the data project. Each test case creates its own data project. And then it will configure the data project per the manifest definition. And then it will execute the test case, do the validation, return the result, and then continue to the next test case. So while this is happening, I can go back to another tab on the same environment, and I can refresh. So we see that 2 test cases have been started, one completed, and one is still in progress. And it will continue to execute one test after the other. So that sample manifest usually takes about a couple of hours to execute. But hopefully this gives an idea of what the capabilities are for the tool set in terms of quickly able to automate test cases. Now I can come back here and I can actually cancel the execution as well. And you can restart the execution, and you can do that. So if I refresh, then it will update the results. As we can see, the first 2 test cases passed, and the third one, I just aborted the test case. Now, if something had failed, then you can do a quick check as to what failed by looking at the validation results here. And based on the validation the framework did for that specific test case, it would show if something had failed. So that is a quick indication as to what went wrong. And you can actually go into the actual data project and data job to investigate as to what happened. So that's pretty much I wanted to cover for today. And thank you for listening to us. Shelley, is there any questions online?
There have been a few questions, but the majority of them have been answered. Let's go ahead and go back to the deck, and we'll wrap things up here by just kind of talking about what are the next steps to get prepared for one version. To prepare for one version, what we've been talking about, the move on version 8.1 to move to version 10, which will then continuously be monthly updates that will include the application, the platform, and financial reporting. The first thing that you will probably want to do is to sign up to be a part of the preview program. So this is that PEEP program that we talked about earlier. You could sign up for our preview programs by going to experience.dynamics.com and choosing the Insider program. Now, once you are a part of an Insider program and you're a part of the Dynamics 365 Insider program, you can see all the previews that are being run on behalf of the Dynamics 365 product. So there's quite a long list. Make sure you scroll through the list, or you could just search on PEEP. And when you search on PEEP, this is then when you could sign up for the Finance and Operations Preview. And this is the program in particular that's going to give you early access to those monthly drops. Customers can sign up to be part of the first release. The first release program, like we talked about earlier, has two parts to it. It's an auto update where Microsoft applies the update, or it is a self update, which means that then we could go ahead and update, and you could pull that update and apply it to your environment yourself. You could sign up for both of these as well. They're called first release, and they're available again in the Insider program. Make sure you identify your business process flows for the RSAT tool that Robert talked about, and also making sure that you've identified your data task automation that Sunil just talked about as well too. So making sure that you understand those data tasks that you would need to automate, as well as identifying your business processes and start recording them. If you're on a version prior to 8.0, make sure you have your extensibility request filed. And we talked about this a lot when we were on that slide that talked about the support lifecycle policy changes. So if you're a customer that's on 7.0, 7.1, or 7.2, and even on 7.3, if you have customizations that you need Microsoft to supply an extension point for, please make sure that you do get that extension request submitted. Now, I do want to make sure and point out that not all extension requests will automatically be granted. We do go through a series of validation on the extensibility requests that are being requested of our team. And if there is a different way that we would recommend you refactor that customization, we will recommend that for you as well. So all of that will be coming through on those extensibility requests that you file. You'll also be able to see in Lifecycle Services when that extensibility request is planned to be made available and then is made available. If you are already using extensions, so you've already have all your customizations moved over to the extensions, or maybe you don't have any customizations, let's get you moving to 8.1. 8.1 is the version really where, from a theory perspective and an implementation perspective of one version, that we've started on. So we have already released our first update on 8.1, and we have updated customers to that. We've also released our second update, which was 8.1.2. That is in our first release program right now, and that is going to be going out generally available to everyone. And then we're also working on 8.1.3 that we'll start updating customers to right after the first of the year. So we're already on this monthly update cadence, adhering to all of the principles that we have available. What you will notice from an 8.1.3 is that the next update will be version 10. Version 10 will be the next update after 8.1.3. And as I said earlier, this is really just looking at it in terms of another monthly update to the 8.1 train. There's always new features, new functionality that we are releasing. Always try to stay current. I know that we're moving at warp speed with all of this, but we do have blogs, we do have release notes and everything that is available as well too. So we're doing our best to try to make sure to keep the communication out there for everyone. This resource slide, and the slide will be made available for everyone as well as the recording. This resource slide, it's a pretty ugly slide, but yet it's probably one of the most impactful, because this is where you can get your links to all of the key details in order to make sure to stay on top of what we are releasing. I want to call out the second bullet. That's our FAQ doc. So all the questions that you guys are asking here, we will be pulling together and putting in our FAQ from all of these tech talks. So that way anyone can gain the benefit of you guys asking these questions. So please keep the questions coming in. Our team is still here to keep answering them. The last bullet is also a key one as well too. If you don't find your question being answered in the FAQ document, please go to our forum. We have a forum specifically about the continuous update. It's on community.dynamics.com. Make sure you go out there and ask your question. We've got a team of people that are monitoring the forum and always replying and trying to get your guys' questions answered. So with that, that takes us right up to the top of the hour. I want to thank the presenters as well as thank you guys for your time and for listening with us today. We will stay on the line to help answer some questions as they come through. But for those of you that have joined us, thank you very much and have a great day.
All right. Thank you, Shelley. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring your attention to a link that I'm posting in the conversation panel. That's a link to a short survey for this web conference, and we ask that you please take a moment before logging out to access it. We hope that you enjoyed today's web conference. And if you have any feedback on how we can provide you with a better event, this is your chance to let us know. The survey scores are on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest score possible. And that is going to conclude today's web conference. As Shelley mentioned, the deck and the recording will be made available within the next 48 to 72 hours. You can access the recording via the same registration link used to attend today's live broadcast. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenters, and thank you, audience, for logging in and joining us today.